Welcome to another deep dive from Chapters Unfolded. If you're new here, this is where we really dig into some fascinating stuff.
Really get to the core of it.
Absolutely. Research articles, sometimes even stuff that you send us. And we boil it down to the good stuff, the really, really interesting bits, and present it back to you in a way that respects your time.
Efficient and engaging, that's the goal.
It is. And this one is a special one
It is.
because it's our 14th deep dive into atomic habits.
Can you believe it? 14 already.
I know, it's amazing. So today we're going deep on something really surprising. It's the idea of making new habits unbelievably easy to start. So get ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about procrastination and habit formation.
Yeah, we often get so fixated on those big goals, like those massive transformations we want to make. We jump to the end result without considering the groundwork, right? And the idea that making things easier, almost ridiculously easy, can be a powerful tool that often feels counterintuitive.
It does. Because we're kind of programmed to think that big results require a ton of effort up front.
Exactly.
So where do we even begin to unpack this idea?
Well, it all starts with what James Clear calls the third law of behavior change. Make it easy. And to really illustrate this point, let's take a look at the story of Twyla Tharp.
Oh, Twyla.
An incredible dancer and choreographer,
Legit.
a true icon, a MacArthur Fellow. And she attributes a lot of her success not just to raw talent, but to incredibly simple daily rituals.
So what's the secret?
Well, Tharp meticulously outlines her morning routine, and, on the surface it seems pretty elaborate. Up before dawn, 5:30 a.m., workout clothes on, leg warmers, sweatshirt the hat, out of her Manhattan apartment into a yellow cab, and then she tells the driver to take her to Pumping Iron Gym for a 2-hour workout. Now, pop quiz. What's the most important part of this routine? The thing that makes the whole habit stick?
Okay. 2-hour workout. Pumping iron must be the workout.
Actually, that's where most people get tripped up. Tharp herself identifies the key ritual not as that demanding workout, but as the seemingly mundane act of getting into that taxi. The moment she tells the driver where to go, that's it. Ritual complete.
So it's not about the intensity of the workout. It's about that one tiny action that triggers the whole chain of events.
Precisely. It's that tiny action that becomes ingrained and makes the entire process repeatable and drastically reduces the chance of her skipping it. It all boils down to a predictable and unbelievably easy starting point.
So the workout itself matters. But the habit is anchored in that simple act of getting in the cab.
Exactly. And if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, research suggests that a staggering 40 to 50% of our daily actions are habitual.
Wow, so almost half of our lives are running on autopilot. But are you saying that these habits actually influence the conscious decisions we make throughout the day?
That's precisely it. The influence of habits goes way beyond those automatic behaviors. They subtly but powerfully shape the conscious decisions that follow.
Okay, so it's not just about brushing our teeth or making coffee. These ingrained patterns actually steer our choices later on. How does that even work?
Imagine this. Think of habits as that on-ramp to a highway. They guide you onto a particular route, and before you know it, you're speeding down that path, making choices that align with that initial direction. It's like the momentum of the habit takes over, influencing what you do next without you even realizing it.
So give me a real-world example of this. Make it concrete for me.
Okay, picture this. You settle in to watch a movie, and maybe it's not that great, but you've already started watching, so you're more likely to finish it even if you're not enjoying it. Or think about grabbing that first snack. It might seem like a conscious choice at the time, but the habit of snacking while watching TV can easily lead to overeating without much thought.
Oh, yeah. And what about that classic, you pick up your phone to quickly check something and suddenly 20 minutes have vanished in an endless scroll?
Exactly. In all these cases, it's the unconscious habit that's dictating what feels like a deliberate choice. It's not always a conscious decision to keep watching the bad movie or scrolling through your phone. It's the habit of starting that sets the stage.
So these seemingly small automatic behaviors are like setting off a chain reaction. We don't even realize it's happening.
Right. And this leads us to what are often called decisive moments. These are those small choices that have a surprisingly big impact on how our day unfolds.
Well, like little hinges that can swing our day in one direction or another.
Exactly. Think about that moment after work when you're deciding whether to change into your workout clothes and head to the gym or just collapse on the couch. That act of changing clothes, that's your decisive moment.
Oh, like Twyla Tharp in her taxi cab.
Precisely. That simple act makes it so much more likely that you'll actually work out. Everything else, the commute, the actual exercises, getting under the weights, it all becomes less daunting once you've cleared that initial hurdle.
It's all about identifying those points in our day where a small, almost mindless action can set us on a completely different course. So what are some other examples of these decisive moments that we encounter every day?
Oh, they're everywhere. Choosing between ordering takeout or starting to cook dinner, deciding whether to drive or hop on your bike for a quick errand. That moment when you choose to sit down and do your homework instead of reaching for the video game controller.
Right. It's like every little choice is a fork in the road leading us down a different path.
And those paths, they actually constrain our future options. Think about it. Walking into a restaurant that's a decisive moment because it limits what you'll likely eat for lunch. You might still have control over your order, but your choices are already shaped by the menu.
So it's like our habits create a menu for our lives. They subtly limit the directions we can go.
Exactly. And that's why mastering these decisive moments is so important. Our days are made up of countless tiny decisions, but it's often a handful of these habitual choices that really determine where we end up. Each choice sets the stage for what we'll do in the following minutes and hours.
So in essence, habits aren't the final destination. They're more like the launch pad. They're Twyla getting in the cab, not the grueling 2-hour workout. It's the initial action that gets everything moving.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really practical and effective strategy for making those launch pads as smooth as possible, the 2-minute rule.
Ah, yes, the 2-minute rule. I've heard about this, but break it down for me. What does it actually mean?
It's deceptively simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. This goes against our natural tendency to go all in right from the start, setting huge goals that can quickly become overwhelming and lead to us giving up.
I totally get that. We get so caught up in the excitement of a new goal and try to do too much too soon.
Yeah, exactly. And that often leads to burnout and discouragement.
So how do we actually use this 2-minute rule in our lives? Give me some examples.
Okay, take the habit of read before bed each night. The 2-minute version would be read one page, want to do 30 minutes of yoga. Simply take out your yoga mat, study for class, just open your notes, fold the laundry, fold one pair of socks. And the ambitious run 3 miles becomes tie your running shoes.
It's amazing how much you can scale down those habits, but what's so powerful about making that first step so tiny?
It removes all friction. It makes the start effortless. Almost anyone can read one page or tie their shoes right. And once you've started, even in that tiny way, it becomes much easier to continue. You overcome the initial resistance, that inertia. You've created a gateway habit, a tiny action that naturally leads you down a more productive path.
So it's all about creating a super low barrier to action,
Sure.
almost guaranteeing that you'll start, and then letting the momentum carry you forward. But how do we figure out what those gateway habits are for our bigger goals?
Great question. You can usually find them by thinking of your goals on a scale from very easy to very hard. Let's say your goal is to run a marathon. That's definitely very hard. Running a 5K is still hard. Walking 10,000 steps may be moderate. A 10-minute walk, that's getting easier. And simply putting on your running shoes is very easy. So while your ultimate goal might be that marathon, your 2-minute gateway habit is just putting on your shoes. That's the decisive moment.
So you're finding that first ridiculously easy action that gets you moving towards your goal.
Exactly. And this works for anything. Want to write a book? Write one sentence. Want to learn a new language? Open your language learning app. It's about finding that initial action that requires almost no effort or willpower.
I bet some people might be a bit skeptical about this approach. If you want to run a marathon, getting excited about tying your shoelaces seems, well, a little anticlimactic.
That's totally understandable. You know the end goal is way bigger than those 2 minutes. But the point here isn't to achieve the whole goal right away. It's to build the habit of showing up consistently. The truth is you have to establish the habit before you can improve it. You have to standardize before you optimize.
So those initial 2 minutes are all about building that consistency, that automatic muscle memory of starting the behavior. It's making the start the habit itself.
Exactly. And as you master that, those 2-minute actions become a ritual that leads into a longer routine. It's not just a trick. It's actually the most effective way to master a complex skill or reach a big goal. The more you ritualize the beginning, the easier it is to slip into that state of deep focus you need to do great work.
Like athletes with their pregame routines or writers with their rituals before they start writing, it's all about creating that smooth transition into focused effort.
Right. By doing the same warm-up before every workout, you're not just physically preparing, but mentally signaling to yourself it's time to focus. By having a creative ritual, you make it easier to get into that flow state for writing or any other creative work. And even something as simple as a consistent bedtime routine, turning off screens, dimming the lights, it all makes it easier to get a good night's sleep. You can't automate the whole complex process, but you can make that first action completely mindless. Make the start effortless, and the rest often follows.
So the 2-minute rule is all about making that initial step so easy you practically can't say no. What if even that feels a bit, well, manipulative? The goal is to do more than just those 2
I
minutes.
see what you mean. If that feels inauthentic, there's another way to approach it. Do the 2-minute version and then stop. Go for a run, but stop after 2 minutes no matter what. Start meditating, but let the timer end at 120 seconds. Study your Arabic flashcards, but only for 2 minutes. And that's it.
So the entire habit in this case is just 2 minutes.
Yes, the 2 minutes is the habit. The focus isn't on tricking yourself into doing more, although that often happens naturally. It's about establishing that consistent behavior no matter how short it is. It's about starting the habit itself.
So the initial focus isn't even on building momentum, but on solidifying that act of showing up consistently.
Exactly. There's a story of a person who lost over 100 pounds by committing to going to the gym every day, but only staying for 5 minutes. They'd go do a tiny bit of exercise and leave as soon as their 5 minutes were up. But after weeks of this, they started thinking, well, I'm already here. Maybe I can stay a bit longer. Years later, that weight loss was a result of that tiny habit of just showing up. Consistency was the key, not intensity.
Such a great example of consistency over intensity, especially at the beginning.
Right. And another good example is journaling. Most people can benefit from writing down their thoughts, but they often give up because it starts to feel overwhelming. The key is to keep it below the threshold where it feels like work. Write less than you feel like writing. Stop before it becomes a chore. Leave yourself wanting more.
That reminds me of the advice to stop writing when you're still in the flow so you're excited to come back to it.
Exactly. And this kind of approach has another benefit. It reinforces the identity you're trying to build. If you showed up at the gym 5 days a week, even if you only work out for 2 minutes, you're casting votes for your identity as someone who doesn't skip workouts. You're shifting the focus from the outcome to the act of showing up.
So those tiny actions become little affirmations, shaping how we see ourselves and reinforcing the person we want to become.
Absolutely. We often get so caught up in the end goal that we forget about those small identity affirming actions. Remember, doing one push up is better than doing none. Practicing guitar for 1 minute is better than never picking it up. Reading one page is better than never opening the book. It's always better to do a little than nothing at all.
That's incredibly encouraging. It takes the pressure off needing to make these huge changes right away.
And once you've established that consistent habit, you can then scale it up to your desired level using something called habit shaping. Start by mastering the first 2 minutes of the smallest version of the behavior, then gradually move to an intermediate step, focusing on those first 2 minutes at each stage. It's all about progression.
So you're essentially breaking down a big goal into these tiny manageable steps. And the 2-minute rule is the foundation for each stage. Can you give us some concrete examples of how habit shaping might work?
Of course. Let's say you want to become an early riser. Phase 1 could be as simple as being home by 10:00 p.m. every night. Once that's a habit, phase 2 might be having all electronics off by 10:00 p.m. Then phase 3 could be being in bed by 10:00 p.m., maybe reading a bit. Phase 4 could be lights out by 10:00 p.m. And finally, phase 5 would be consistently waking up at your desired time, like 6:00 a.m. Each phase builds on the previous one, always focusing on that easy first step.
That makes something like waking up early feel much more doable. What about another example? Say someone wants to go vegan.
Sure. Phase 1 could be adding vegetables to every meal. Once that's a habit, phase 2 could be cutting out meat from four-legged animals. Phase 3 could be no more poultry. Phase 4 could be cutting out seafood. And the final phase would be eliminating all animal products, including eggs and dairy. Again, gradual steps making each change manageable.
And one last one. What about someone who wants to start exercising regularly?
For that, phase 1 could be simply changing into your workout clothes after work every day. Phase 2 could be stepping outside in your workout clothes, maybe just for a quick walk around the block. Phase 3 could be driving to the gym, doing just 5 minutes of exercise and leaving. Phase 4 could be aiming for 15 minutes of exercise once a week. And finally, phase 5 would be gradually working up to your ultimate goal, whether that's exercising 3 times a week for longer or hitting a specific fitness target.
Wow. Those examples show how even huge goals can be broken down into tiny, manageable starting points. And the 2-minute rule is there every step of the way.
Exactly. The key takeaway here is whenever you're struggling with a habit, new or old, use the 2-minute rule. It's a simple but powerful way to make your habits easy to start. And often that's all it takes to set you on the path to lasting change.
So today we've learned how habits, even tiny ones, shape our actions. We explored those decisive moments, those little choices that can make a big difference. And we discovered the 2-minute rule as a tool for starting new habits by making that first step super easy. We talk about how ritualizing the start of a habit can boost our focus. And most importantly, we emphasized how consistency, simply showing up, is key to establishing any habit before we even try to perfect it.
Now think about those habits you've been wanting to build but haven't quite started. What's the 2-minute version of that habit? Play around with that idea and see how much easier it becomes to take that first step when you lower the barrier to entry. You might be surprised by how much momentum you can build from even the smallest start.
This has been an awesome deep dive into making habits easy. Hopefully this gives you some ideas to put into practice right away.
If you found this deep dive helpful and want to explore more ways to build better habits, understand human behavior, and unlock your potential, make sure to subscribe to Chapters Unfolded for more deep dives. We've got so much more to discover together.
Definitely. And if you enjoyed this chat, hit that like button and share your thoughts or questions in the comments. We love hearing from you. And feel free to share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding the power of easy beginnings. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.